Hi everyone, James here, Anotech Tech Talk. I just got back. I had to go run an errand real quick. Needed to pick up some firewood. I'm going to do a little fire and barbecue in the backyard tonight, so that should be fun. But I digress. So the next thing I want to do on this build is install the RAM. And interesting little backstory on that. I work in software quality assurance, and we just told our end users that we recommend that they use 4 gigs of RAM. And some of them are still running 2 gigs, on older systems. So one of my colleagues, his name is Jeff. I won't say his last name on video here, but really nice guy, really fun, laid back kind of guy. Was kind of joking around with me and said, "Hey, now that we're recommending that they get more RAM, maybe you could do a video on how to install RAM." So. I said definitely. He probably didn't know I actually had this project in mind for building the gaming machine, but it ended up working out pretty good. So, Jeff, this video is dedicated to you, and I'll be installing some RAM for this desktop computer. Now, not all motherboards are going to be the same as far as how the RAM is laid out and what kind of RAM they use. But I'll talk about that a little bit, so if our end users want to watch this video as a way of kind of teaching them how to install the RAM themselves, hopefully this will be some help to them. So let me pause real quick. I'm going to situate the camera a little bit better, kind of over the top of the board, so during this video you're really just going to see the motherboard in my hands and see me installing the RAM into the motherboard. So I'm going to pause it real quick. I'll be right back. I'm going to situate the camera and we'll get going. Okay, like I said, you're not going to see my face during this. I apologize. I'm working with the equipment that I have, so we'll just have to make do. So when you're picking out RAM for a motherboard, you have to make sure that it's compatible with the motherboard that you're using. A lot of the times this is much easier to do if you're building a new machine like I'm doing here, but if you're upgrading on an existing machine, especially if it's something that's proprietary that's bought from like Dell or HP, that could be a little bit harder to know what kind of RAM is compatible. The way you do that is go onto the manufacturer's website for your particular model of computer, and they typically will have an owner's manual in PDF form that you can look at. And in that manual, that'll go over the different RAMs the different type of RAM that's compatible for the motherboard. So in this particular case, my motherboard uses DDR3 1600 or above, I think up to 3000. So that's what I ended up getting. I got Corsair Vengeance DDR3 1600, and it's a pretty good RAM. It's got an absolutely huge heatsink on it, and you can see that here. Now, not all RAM's going to look like this for the most part. Let me zoom out real quick. If you're upgrading RAM on like a business class machine, you definitely don't need something this extreme. And if it's a small form factor computer, you might not even be able to fit something in with this big of a heatsink. So you're going to want to look for something that's just the chip of RAM itself, and it should be more than adequate as far as temperature is concerned, because you're not putting a business class machine through the rigors that maybe a gaming machine does. And I think for the most part, the heat spreader on this RAM, it is functional, but it's probably not that necessary. I don't really think RAM will get that hot during gaming. It could, but I've never really seen it get that hot. I have a server at home, my own little home server that uses DDR2 EEC fully buffered RAM. And if you want to feel some RAM get hot, I tell you what, try that out, and you'll see what really gets hot. And that has some serious heat spreaders on it. But I think for the purposes of this build, this RAM is more than adequate. I think it's going to stay cool. I don't need to attach any other fans to it, so on and so forth. But the way that you install RAM, let me put this aside real quick. You'll see here, hopefully you see good enough, there's these little sockets that you installed in. And on the socket, there's like these little levers on the end. let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay. Yep. So you can see them right here. They see how you push it back and forth. If you push it back in the unlocked position, that's what you need to do to insert the RAM. The other thing that you might see, it might be kind of hard here on video. There's like a little slot here, right here, and that little slot has to match up with the slot on your chip of RAM. So let me bring it up here. See this little slot right here? So that's what you're going to line it up with. It's got to go directly in there. Now you'll notice my board has 4 DIMM slots to install RAM, and so I can get up to 32 gigs if I want. I actually just bought a 16 gig kit, so 2 8 gig chips, and I'll install those. You have to be careful if you're installing 2 chips of RAM to know what slot it goes into, especially if you have more than 2 slots. So if you're running 4 slots, then typically on the motherboard it'll be printed and it'll tell you which slots you want to take up first. So for example, mine says that I want to use slots 2 and 4 because they're installed in pairs. They're a dual channel. So I'm gonna take this, and let me zoom out a little bit here, and I'm gonna install the first one in slot 2 and the first one in slot 4. And then if I want to go install more RAM, I'm gonna want to buy it in another pair. So I'm taking advantage of that dual channel. So let me go ahead and get slots 2 and 4 ready, and I'll zoom in here a little bit more. Now, if you're pushing it in, if you're installing it correctly, it shouldn't really take much force at all. So I've lined the RAM up, the chip, in these little grooves that it slides into, and then I just push down, and you'll hear a click sound. And if it's installed correctly, those 2 little levers on the side will have pushed back into place, and they'll be locking your chip of RAM into place. So I've done that on this first one, and then I'll go ahead and do it on slot 4 as well. And there's really nothing to this. I mean, a novice can really install RAM quite easily. So let me position this a little bit better. So you'll see my fingers are on each end here. So I'll push one side in first, it'll click into place, and then the other side, and it clicks into place. Just be careful how much pressure you're putting down on your board, because you don't want to crack your motherboard. That would be definitely bad news. But it doesn't take a lot of skill with computers to be able to do this. Let me kind of zoom out here and show you. And you don't have to have the motherboard outside of the case. It can definitely stay inside the case to do the install. And there you have it. Now, if you're wanting to, say you're using a laptop computer, it's the same principles. You have to get the correct RAM to match what's compatible with your laptop, and you can do that by going onto the manufacturer's website, looking at the owner's manual, and it'll tell you what RAM you can use. Now, laptop RAM is about half the length. It's a 204 pin, where these are 240 pin, I believe. So definitely they're about half the length, but they still have that little notch in them that you have to line up. And typically with desktops or laptops today, there's a little service door on the bottom side of it, and it's typically held on with like 1 screw. So you'll just unscrew it, open up the service tray, you'll see your RAM right there. If there's already a chip in there, you can keep that installed if you want, and then just install an additional chip. Or what I would recommend doing is just buy your RAM as a set, so 2 chips. You can either do 2 2 gig chips, 2 4 gig chips, 2 8 gig chips, and it really just depends on how much you want to spend, how much memory you want installed on your computer. I'd say at a bare minimum these days, everyone should have 4 gigs of RAM, especially if you're running a 64 gig operating system. And in the case of our end users, they should be running at least Windows 7 Pro or above, and that will definitely be a 64-bit operating system. So they'll be able to take advantage of addressing the full 4 gigs of RAM. But that's about it, you know. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask on the discussion board for this video, and I'll try to answer them as good as possible. For our end users, you'll know who you are. I don't want to say on video to everyone in the world here, but to our end users that are watching this, you know, feel free to send me an email to at my work email address, and you'll know what it is. Again, I'm not going to say on video, but and I'll try to talk you through and figure out what kind of RAM you need to upgrade. So that's it. It's really simple. Jeff, I hope you liked the video, and feel free to watch the other videos that are part of this build series. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And the next step is going to be installing the motherboard tray into the case, and then I'm going to put some thermal compound on the processor here and install the cooling block on top of my processor. Once that's done, I'm going to run all my cables, my 24-pin power cable, my 8-pin power cable, get them all cable managed, and install my video card, my drive, so on and so forth. But those will be, you know, videos that follow. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you liked the video.